So welcome everybody. My name is Jens Oliak. I'm a product manager at Deutsche Telekom, product innovation, responsible for product management as part of the corporate introduction program for NB-IoT. I hope every one of you had a successful login into this webinar. No technical questions. Hopefully you can all hear me and see me very clearly. So today we're going to speak about NarrowBand IoT. That's the first webinar in 2017. It's a quite important topic. Hopefully, many of you are online. Later on, I will learn how many it was. So, Narrowband IoT is a quite a new technology, and I'm very pleased to be able to tell you some more about it. What I will tell you today is four things. Once this works, I'm going to tell you four things. I will tell you a bit more about the technology of Narrowband IoT itself. So, what is it? Secondly, we'll tell you something about how we learned more about the utilization of this technology and the use cases. So by using our Narrowband IoT prototyping hub. Thirdly, I'm going to tell you about what we learned about possible Narrowband IoT use cases. And fourthly, I will give you a preview of what we will show in Barcelona next week at the Mobile World Congress. We'll still have time for questions, so I'll try to speak for about half an hour, and then you'll be able to pose questions. You will be able to pose questions throughout the first half an hour using the tool, and I'll try to answer as many of them as possible. Right. So let's start. Actually, let's not start with the technology. Let's start with the customers that leads to the required technology. So myself, I've been in the M2M or IoT space for about 4 years now, and I've had many customer interaction. Of course, I spoke to all our salespeople. We have a large team of people at Deutsche Telekom in Germany and many other countries speaking with customers about IoT applications. Today, when we speak about IoT or when we sell IoT, we sell IoT based on GSM or LTE. So whenever you want to connect something, you would have to use GSM or LTE, maybe 3G. And what our customers say today is that some of the downsides of the current technology. So one of them is battery lifetime. So many applications the customers would like to run require a long battery lifetime in the sense that the customer cannot go to every single device every few days to recharge it unless it has like a wired permanent connectivity. But many of them don't have a wired, not connectivity, more wired electricity. So we need something where a battery can last for many years. Secondly, especially if you have millions of devices, so especially if you have a large number of devices, of course, it goes without saying you cannot replace of them. So we talk about the technology where over the complete product life cycle or device life cycle, one battery charge would last. Secondly, many of the IoT use cases are within buildings. And within buildings, especially when you go into the cellars, with current technologies, you have a very limited coverage. So we're looking at something that has a really reliable connectivity, even within maybe some underground levels. Thirdly, what customers do today, or what many companies do today when they when they try to network things, they use gateways. So they have local networks of devices that are all connected to one gateway. For example, via Bluetooth or 868 radio or Wi-Fi. This looks cheap. In fact, it's not cheap because the customer has to go, or the user has to manage those local networks and make sure that everything works. So we say the total cost of ownership is still quite high. The good thing about Narrowband IoT is you have a direct connectivity per device, and I'll come to this on the next slide. And last but not least, the cost side, the current prices for modules as well as for the connectivity, for the broadband mobile technologies such as GSM and LTE are too high for the customer to realize many rather simple and low-priced use cases, and Narrowband IoT will be in a better position. So these are four things we always hear, and therefore the 3GPP, which is of course an industry association, that industry body that standardizes technologies, has started standardizing a new technology called narrowband IoT. And I will now tell you our view of the most important traits and characteristics of narrowband IoT. So we always talk about 8 things that make up the DNA of narrowband IoT. So the first one is narrowband IoT can support a large number of devices, billions of devices, so much more devices than there are human beings on Earth. Approximately 100 times more devices per radio or per cell. So it's compared to GSM. So in a city, you can have millions or many tens of millions of devices supported. Secondly, the expense of all of the advantages of narrowband IoT comes at the low data volumes. It means that that's the only downside you have. You cannot transmit as much data as you can using GSM or LTE. In fact, technically, it's between 600 bits and 250 kilobits per second. 250 kilobits per second, please be careful, that's just a theoretical maximum. In fact, it's going to be much lower than this. However, looking at different use cases, there are only very few of them that require higher bandwidth. So most of them for most of them it's sufficient if the device sends or receives some small messages every now and then. So it's usually not an issue. And it has bidirectional communication. That's also important compared to some other technologies. Second big advantage is the low energy consumption. I've mentioned this. One thing that you might have frequently heard is those 10 years of battery-powered operation. Of course, this depends on what kind of batteries you have. So in this case, it's 2 AA cells and what usage you have. Of course, if a device sends and receives data every hour, which is possible with NB-IoT, but then the battery won't last for 10 years. So those 10 years only relate to a scenario where you have a low typical NB-IoT traffic pattern and 2 AA batteries, and then the 3GPP has calculated that 10 years would work out for 2 AA batteries. Low cost. The only figure I can tell you right now is that the radio module target price of the 3GPP designers is below $5. So less than €5. We expect this industry target to be met in a few years' time, and then I think it's really possible. Combined with lower connectivity costs. As a product manager, if you construct a product that requires permanent connectivity, to factor in the radio module and the lifetime connectivity into your product costs, and as a one-off charge, and you would never have to worry again about being connected. Next one, deep indoor penetration. Technically speaking, the one KPI to remember is the 20 decibels of extra link budget compared to GSM. It means, in casual terms, it means that a device can listen much better, and the base station shouts much louder than in the usual case. And combined with less data and a much simpler protocol, it's a much better actual transmission quality you get. Worldwide standard is the one point that distinguishes narrowband IoT from competitors in the LPWA space. LPWA, just to make sure, stands for low power wide area networks. So narrowband IoT is the industry standard for really low bandwidth communication, supported by international firms, by all the international vendors. By this technology standard, we expect economies of scale, which then leads to the good prices of radio modules, for example, but also compatibility. That means that your NB-IoT devices will work in any country rolling out NB-IoT in the next few years. And licensed spectrum is a part of that. So we as Deutsche Telekom will run NB-IoT on our licensed spectrum, which means that we can manage the network and we can guarantee quality levels, as opposed to other technologies that don't use licensed spectrum, where you might always have an interference with other users. Security is part of the good thing about security, that it's NB-IoT is part of the LTE family. So NB-IoT is based on LTE more or less. It means that we will still use a SIM card like LTE, and we'll have all the existing and proven authentication mechanisms, which means it's very difficult to hack into NB-IoT compared to other radio technologies. And the last one, plug and play, that relates a bit to the point I made about gateways. With NB-IoT, you can afford to directly connect every device, and you don't need to worry about any mesh networks or any gateways for wide area communication. So we think you can lower your total cost of ownership using NB-IoT. So that was a summary of the characteristics of NB-IoT. And just compare NB-IoT once again to some other technologies. So as I said, LPWA belongs to the LTE family. On this slide, as you can see, LTE relates to the broadband LTE types, so LTE Cat 1 and so on. So LTE and GSM have higher bandwidth, LPWA have rather lower bandwidth. You distinguish between NB-IoT and proprietary technologies such as Sigfox or LoRa, for example. We believe that NB-IoT has the opportunity, the advantage that you have inter-vendor interoperability, so you're not getting locked into one particular vendor. You will we already have a large ecosystem of mobile network operators, network vendors, and chip and device vendors, and it's growing every week or every month. And the international footprint, which you don't have today, I admit, of course, you will all know this, but it's going to be rolled out very fast in many countries. And the license spectrum, I think I already touched this more or less. It's a network that is being managed by an operator such as Deutsche Telekom, with a very long experience and track record of successfully managing large telecommunication networks. So I think, personally, I think that's a big advantage to smaller players running networks. Right. Now let's go, before we go into the actual use cases, let's just tell you how we got the information, or how we got those insights about use cases. So of course we have lots of customers with whom we speak about narrowband IoT and other technologies, but especially since this is such a new technology, we wanted to make sure that we also get in touch with developers who work on particular technical solutions for NB-IoT. And thanks to our incubation subsidiary Hubraum, if you've heard about it, we have set up a so-called NB-IoT prototyping hub program. That's a small ecosystem for partners. So we are working with 20 so-called program solution partners, mostly smaller companies across Europe and as well as Israel. They belong to several verticals, several industries. So smart city industries, smart city as well as industry, but also some consumer applications. They've been able to try out the NB-IoT networks or the NB-IoT technology very early in the game, and they have developed the first solution prototypes, and many of them will be featured in Barcelona. I'll tell you about this in a few minutes. And current prototyping labs are available, and then the test networks are available in Berlin, Krakow, and Bonn. In addition to further test networks in other European countries we're having, but those are the places where the program solution partners develop and test the prototypes. So I think this was a good thing, or this is still a very good thing that allows us to learn a lot. That also allows a better direct connection between our program solution partners, like hardware vendors such as Huawei or u-blox, as well as our customers. Now let's talk about particular use case we work on at the moment. So I've picked out 15 of them where there are current activities going on with partners who develop products or customers who use NB-IoT for their own purposes. So many of those use cases are probably let's call them usual suspects. So smart parking, street lighting, smart metering. It's probably something you heard about it because many people are talking about it. So we're also working on them. There are further things like smart water management or construction equipment monitoring, which I think is quite exciting because you cannot really fulfill those use cases with technologies like GSM or LTE, because sometimes, mostly because of battery issue, but also sometimes because of the deep interpenetration factor. For example, for water management, sometimes you need to have your modules or your sensors within some pipelines, and with GSM or GPRS, you would not have appropriate coverage. Then there are also things, sometimes smart agriculture or infrastructure monitoring, again, where you are talking about many remote sensors, and you cannot really network them in any other way than in any other meaningful way than narrowband IoT, as well as asset tracking is a great one, where you also need a battery charge that will last for many years, and it's great to have the opportunity to locate a particular asset, be it a suitcase or be it maybe a boat that you're having, to be able to monitor it for a long period of time, or after a long period of time. You don't need to worry about recharging your battery. Okay, I'll jump to the next slide, which is about use case that we do not work on at the moment. So the last one is really actual customers and actual partners. In our team, we did a very short brainstorm session, and we already came up with many interesting objects that one would like to connect, or one would like to monitor remotely, but you cannot do it today, as I said, because the technology is too expensive, or the battery wouldn't last that long, or it wouldn't go deep enough into buildings. So if you really think about it, there are such a huge and diverse set of objects that you would like to either monitor. You would like to monitor their status, their temperature, or their charge, for example, in a car battery. Sometimes it's just about their location. Sometimes it's about whether it has been moved. So one fair use case would be to have a theft tracking of wood logs, which is a common thing in at least German forests, that some of them get stolen, but there's no real way to check whether they've been moved. Sorry. Basically, any device, you can think about it. So at the end of the day, I believe it's just a matter of price. So hopefully one day NB-IoT will be so cheap, and the device will be so cheap that zillions of devices will get connected, and there's going to be a lot of great use cases coming up. Let me summarize what I know about reasonable use case for NB-IoT and maybe use case that are not recommended for NB-IoT. So starting with the data rates. Whenever you can afford a low data rate, then NB-IoT might be something for you. As I said, if you have a high data rate, then you might consider a different technology. You need infrequent device activity, so it doesn't make sense if your device needs to send out a status message every minute or so. It needs to be somehow infrequent. I cannot really give you a ballpark because it depends really on the size of the message and whether your device is going to be supplied with permanent electricity or not, but just rather infrequent device activity. I think it only makes sense for a high number of devices. If you're only talking about a handful of devices, then you might as well take a different technology, because then the price might not make such a big place, such a big role. Cost sensitive. If your use case is cost sensitive, it might be a good choice. If you don't really care about cost, because, for example, your object costs you 1 million euros, then you might as well take LTE with a huge battery and a large antenna. Another little restriction of NB-IoT is the latency. So we don't have, to be honest, we don't have too many or reliable benchmarks yet. But from what we know, it's about you have to think of up to 10 seconds of latency. So it's fine for, again, I think it's really fine for most use cases. But if you need real-time information, or if you want to do a control, for example, of a drone or something like this, then of course NB-IoT would be too slow. NB-IoT doesn't also does not have a wake-up function. It means that in order to achieve that battery charge, or the long battery lifetime, NB-IoT has some special power-saving features that are typically used. It also means that devices are for the most large proportion of their lifetime are in sleep mode, and when they're in sleep mode, they cannot be woken up from the outside. So they either wake up because of an interval, or because of a network event where they have to report back to the network, or if a sensor tells them to wake up. For example, if a temperature has dropped below a certain threshold, or maybe because the object has been moved and the gyrometer tells the module to wake up. But if you need devices that are permanently reachable for many years and still need to have run on battery power, then also NB-IoT will not work. Actually, I don't know of any other technology that would enable a battery powered device to be online and pageable from the outside for many years. And the last point to keep in mind: if you have a use case that needs long battery lifetime, NB-IoT might be your choice, and deep indoor penetration, then again NB-IoT might be your choice. Two things that NB-IoT cannot cope today, or cannot really serve today, is safety critical applications, mainly because we don't have enough experience with the practical usage and performance of NB-IoT yet. So please don't start with safety critical applications, start with simple applications. And Deutsche Telekom is not implementing SMS on the NB-IoT network, which is, for me, it's not a big restriction. I haven't come across any person or any company for whom this is a restriction, but just to mention this. Right. So I've talked about the use cases. So what we know about NB-IoT use case, let me give you a brief overview of what we will show at the Mobile World Congress next week. Before I forget it myself, I will also be available and standing at the Deutsche Telekom booth at the NB-IoT area. So in case you pose a question today and we cannot answer the question today, please feel to contact me next week. I'll be there from Monday morning to Thursday afternoon. So I'm certainly going to be available for a chat. So Mobile World Congress, Barcelona, Fira Gran Via, hall number 3. So Telekom's in hall number 3. Booth number, I would say don't worry about it. I'm sure if you're on hall number 3, you will certainly spot a big magenta colored stand. The Telekom stand or Telekom booth is, as every year, is quite large. Also has a stage and one particular area called about connected life, and part of that is NB-IoT, as I said. For NB-IoT, there are 4 things or 4 physical objects we have available, or actually 5 of them we have available. So because one of them is not on the screen, which is a street lamp, powered by our partner FlashNet. But apart from this, we have one interactive table, LED table, which is the thing you see on the right bottom corner of the slide, where many of the use cases can be shown. And we have 3 separate exhibits, which goes about bees, about smart heating, and about water monitoring. And I'll tell you a bit more about those 3 use cases, or those 3 exhibits. So the first one, smart metering or smart home, is a use case. I cannot tell you yet who our partner company will be, but you will hear about it in our press release tomorrow, or just visit our booth on Monday. But it's about sensors in buildings, office buildings, or residential buildings, which measure the temperature. So you can have statistics on how the temperature developed in which room, and you can also regulate the temperature per room. Another more, I would say, a more exotic use case is okay. It falls into the smart agriculture sector, but it's quite exotic, as I would say. It's about beekeeping. So we've been working together with a company from Montenegro called Bee and Me, and they have a personal, I would say, involvement or personal relationship to beekeeping. So some of their relatives are beekeepers, and what I didn't know is that the beekeepers or beehives are sometimes located in quite remote areas in some mountains or forests, and it's of course impossible to visit them every day. Still, it's sometimes critical to know if the bees in the beehive have a problem in terms of maybe there's an enemy attacking, or there's an illness, or something else happens. So three important metrics that are measured in the beehive is the humidity, the temperature, and the weight. The weight is also relevant to know the filling level of the honey, and this is something you can monitor from the distance. And at the Mobile World Congress, don't worry, we won't have physical or real bees, but there will be virtual bees, and you will see those virtual bees. Sometimes they will get more nervous, and then temperature will rise, and then you will see an alarm on our pad. So this is a great. It's a very exotic use case, but I think it's a great example of an NB-IoT application. And another example would be the company Ayeka from Israel. They do industrial monitoring, and we have a special example set up for water management. So sensors who measure the water level at a lake, the water pressure at a reservoir, to also tell you how the filling level of the water reservoir, and also some sensors to measure the water quality or the pH level of the water. And we'll also demonstrate you how those metrics will change when there's, for example, more higher temperatures or more sun, then the water levels will drop and so on. I think that's, especially for remote locations, that's a very good example of NB-IoT. And on our, as I just mentioned, we also have a nice stage with different, not shows, but different presentations throughout the 4 days. And Wednesday, the 1st of March, will be a special day for, at least for me personally, as an NB-IoT product manager, because between 11 and 12:30, there will be several presentations on NarrowBand IoT, where some people from the Prototyping Hub will speak, for example, and some of our partners will also be on stage and present their solution. That's for now. That's my presentation for now. Now I would like to look at the questions that you've posed. Just to be aware, if you have missed something today, or you only came in later, or you would like to enjoy my presentation once again, it's going to be available at our website. You can see it, telekom.com/m2m, and even on our YouTube channel. And of course, let me remind you to subscribe to our M2M newsletter. Now, I'm going to look into questions that came up. So let me read it up. Could you give me an indication on the expected connectivity costs for NB-IoT? Actually, there's several. There's loads of questions, but let me answer them one by one. I cannot give you an indication of the connectivity costs for NB-IoT. Once we announce a launch, which will be tomorrow, there was going to be a press conference. Before the launch, there will be some first indications from our commercial management in our markets, and only then will we able to tell you something about connectivity costs. I'm sorry. Can you comment on the Telefonica made with Sigfox? I didn't understand the sentence to be honest. I think I said some things about Sigfox and LoRa in general. I don't like speaking too much on our competition. I'm afraid I've mentioned the main points from my side, that we're using licensed technology and that we are using an industry standard. I also believe that if a customer needs to make up their mind on which technology to invest in, the use cases I know are always for a long time horizon, so they are at least for a horizon of 10 years. And as I said, I don't want to talk about the competition, but I can assure you that Deutsche Telekom will still be around in 10 years' time. And since NarrowBand IoT is part of 4G and 4G is part of 5G, we'll definitely still operate those networks in 10 years' time. What are you doing regarding construction equipment monitoring? Construction equipment monitoring is also a wide area, so there are different use cases possible. So there's the actual construction equipment monitoring. There are some other use cases such as industrial dryers. So those are objects. Those are I'm not sure if you call it dehumidifiers. I think that's the right word. So these are machinery you put into buildings, into the basement, to dry out. For example, if there has been an accident of excess water, or in general, if you want to dry out the clay, and those also need to have a remote monitoring. Can you please elaborate the future of NB-IoT in the context of 5G networks? Thank you very much. That's what I tried or just briefly covered. So if you know 5G is just in the final process of standardization, but 5G will largely be based on 4G, so it will not be something completely different, but it will reuse many of the 4G components. And NB-IoT is an integral part of 4G. So sometimes NB-IoT can also be considered as 5G. I wouldn't go that far, but we are definitely compatible to 5G. How would you convince your clients to use NB-IoT instead of cheaper and already available competition, e.g. Sigfox? I think I've said some words about this. I'm not sure about cheaper. When you say cheaper, I think it's always, from your personal perspective or the perspective of your company, it's always to think of the total cost of ownership, of the question of what quality can you get for what money. So I don't think connectivity costs are the only costs you should take into account. You should also take into account, of course, module costs, also long-term module costs, any maintenance costs, and service costs. Another question, where is the NB-IoT currently available? It is a new technology. It has just been standardized in summer last year. We'll have a press release tomorrow where we'll announce or tell you more about the first launches of NB-IoT. So it's not available today, but it will become available shortly. Last one, or not last one on this list. Why do you not suggest the technology for security critical applications? Let me be clear on this. I didn't mean it's not possible for security critical applications. What I said, it's a very new technology. So if you have a security critical application, which, for example, which will have an impact on life or death of people, then I would suggest to first take some time to really pilot this technology and learn and have a bit of experience about the technology. Therefore, please start with non-safety critical applications. And if I hold the same presentation in a couple of years' time, then possibly this particular bullet point or this particular item will have gone from my list. Okay, last question. Could you tell me something more about your current customers? There will be an announcement of one large lead customer tomorrow in our press conference. As I said, the NB-IoT network is not rolled out yet. Therefore, the customers we have at the moment are currently piloting NB-IoT based on the test networks, and we will announce further lead customers and further references step by step. But there's nothing, I'm afraid, nothing I can tell you as of today. Right, if there are no further questions, at least nothing has been received via our web tool. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope every one of you is still online and you didn't have any problems with the connection. In case you're in Barcelona next week, please come and see me and tell me how you liked the presentation. And of course, please follow NB-IoT because I think it's an exciting technology. Thank you very much and have a good day. Bye-bye.